Hello everybody, how are you? Today we are going to talk about an important math concept called the domain. We can find the domain about this function. F of x equal x power 2 plus 3x plus 1. The domain will be R. Or we can write it in interval from negative infinity and infinity. And what about f of x equal to x? The domain will be R. Real number. Because if you want to find the result about any digit, you must write here 2 or 3 or 4 or some digits such as -5 and so on. The result here we can find the domain. So each number we can find the image about it in a number such as 2. If we put here 2 multiply 2 equal 4, 4 plus 1 equal 5 and so on. So the domain equal R, or we can write it negative infinity and infinity. Opened interval from negative infinity to infinity. Another example, f of x equal 2x plus 1 over x power 2 plus 5x multiply plus 6. Again, x power 2 plus 5x plus 6. We want to find the domain about this function. First, we must put this denominator in the bottom equal not equal 0. We must write this denominator not equal 0 to find the domain. So the domain will be R subtract set of 0 of denominator. So we must write x power 2 plus 5x plus 6 not equal 0. Then you can factorize this expression. X power 2 equal x multiplied by x and 6 equal 2 multiplied by 3. We can write positive and positive equal positive, and if we add 2 plus 5, 3 equal 5, then solution about this equation will be -2 x not equal -2 and equal x not equal to -3. So the domain will be R subtract -2 and -3. Because if we want to find the domain, we must do -2 or -3 here in the numerator by x, or we can take cancelled x and write -2 and -3. If we do that, the denominator will be equal 0. So this bottom must not equal to 0, because any number divided by 0 it's impossible. We can't find any number divided by 0. Another example, f of x equal 2 over x power 2 plus 3. We want to find the domain about this function. Look at this denominator not equal 0. If we write x power 2 plus 3 equal 0, x power 2 equal -3, and x will be equal square root of -3, it's impossible. It's impossible to find the result. Okay, so this domain about this function will be R only, because we haven't any 0 in the denominator here. Another function, f of x equals square root of x plus 1. We must write under this root more than or equal to 0. X plus 1 must be more than or equal to 0. So x will be more than or equal to -1. If we do this in number line, you can write here closed from -1 to positive infinity. So the domain will be interval closed from -1 and opened from infinity, -1 to infinity, half closed interval. Okay, another example. What about f of x equal x power 2 plus 2x plus 3 over root of x plus 1. We know denominator not equal to 0 must this denominator equal not equal to 0, because any number divided by 0 we haven't any number. It's impossible divided any number by 0, so we must write this denominator not equal 0. So root x plus 1 must not equal to 0. we can find the result by under this root equal what? Equal 0. We can power this expression, power this expression, power 2 equal x plus 1, nothing not equal to 0, and x nothing not equal -1. So x must be not equal -1. So the domain about this function will be real number subtract -1, and this denominator x plus 1 must be more than equal 0. So x must be more than -1, and x not equal negative. It's impossible. So real number subtract -1 such that -1 and so on. We can draw it interval here from -1 to infinity opened. So the domain about this function, we can write r subtract -1, and we can cancel the negative from -infinity to -1 opened. So we can write another form about this domain here. We can write the domain equal from -1 must be opened to infinity. So the domain about this function will be opened interval from -1 to infinity. Don't doing r subtract -1 only, because we have a root. If we have x plus 1 without root, we can find this domain about this example without using root. But if we have this root, we must write the domain such as this interval, because if we do -2 here, the result will be -1. -2 plus 1 equal -1, so we can't find the result. So the domain about this function, if we have f of x equal x power 2 plus 2x plus 3 over x plus 1. This is the domain about this function, but this function, the domain will be -1 and infinity opened. Okay. Another example, f of x equal square root of x plus 1 over x power 2 subtract by 4. We know this denominator must not equal 0. So x power 2 subtract 4 not equal 0. Then x power 2 must equal 4. Then x must not equal positive or negative square root of 4. So x will be not equal positive or -2. Then you can write this domain here r subtract theta of 2 and -2. This is domain about this function r subtract positive or -2. It's about domain about domain 1 about this denominator. And what about numerator here? We must write x plus 1 more than or equal to 0. This denominator x plus 1 under this root must be more than or equal to 0. So x will be more than or equal to -1. Then we can write d2 equal from -1 close to infinity. So we can find d1 intersection about d2 to find the domain about this function. This interval r subtract positive 2 or -2 intersection -1 to infinity. Okay. So we can write -1 to infinity, and we can write this interval from 2 and infinity. So the result will be -1 to infinity, because -2 not belonging to this interval, not here in domain. -2 not belonging to domain 1 or domain 2, but 2 is belonging to domain 1 from -1 to infinity. So the result will be -1 to infinity. is the domain about this function. So the result will be from -1 to infinity is the domain about this function.